Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to What's on the Playlist today. And today I would like to speak about uh, Sittin' In by Loggins and Messina, an image of which you will see here. This is their debut album. Jim Messina was actually a fairly well-established musician. He had been a member of Buffalo Springfield and Poco. So he had a following and he was well known among the recording industry. Kenny Loggins was initially basically a nobody. At the time, Jim Messina had gotten out of being a performer. He was working as a record producer for Columbia Records. And, initially he wanted to use his contacts to help, Kenny Loggins out. Excuse me. He assembled musicians from people that he knew in the industry. I mean, some of the band from musicians he knew in the industry. And his initial goal was just to help, get this new guy started. But in the end, they wound up co-writing so much of the music together, if I can talk today, that it became a real duo project. They became an accidental duo. He did enough work that it was a full partnership. And initially, it was supposed to be a one-off. He had no interest in going back on the road, no interest in touring, but one of the guys I knew at Columbia Records said, "Look, this is good. I really think you should, work with this guy and be a duo and go on tour and stuff and go back to performing music." Said you'd be making a big mistake if you don't, but that's just my opinion. Sleep on it. And after sleeping on it, Jim Messina did want to continue the partnership. And it was a similar thing with Kenny Loggins too. It delayed Kenny Loggins getting a solo career, but they had enough success on their as a duo that when he did finally go solo, he was an established name. Of the album itself, it didn't get a lot of traction. There was Vahivala, kind of like a Jamaican vibe song that charted as well did Nobody But You, but they weren't really top number one hits. I think one of those actually reached number 3. Don't quote me on that. But the album became somewhat of an underground hit. Some of the other songs got radio play. So like I said, it never really charted. It became known. I've heard most of these songs on the radio growing up. Not all of them, but enough of them. A couple ones that I do want to talk about. Nobody But You and Bahibala are, again, the 2 top charted songs in the album. The second track on the album is called Danny's Song. That became a staple of their performances. It became one of their more popular songs. Kenny Loggins actually wrote that when he was 17. And he wrote it for his brother, Danny Loggins. He wrote it when his brother had his first child. So it was kind of a celebration of his brother and his nephew. So very touching. House at Pooh Corner is another one I want to talk about. Partly because that is probably one of my favorite songs by Loggins and Messina. If I had to make a list of top 100 songs, House at Pooh Corner probably would be on it. It's a very silly song in that it is a song sung from the point of view of Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin. The point of view kind of alternates a little bit as the song progresses, but it's a song about Winnie the Pooh and the characters in the 100-Acre Woods. And being a huge fan of Winnie the Pooh myself, I always thought that was fun. That kind of a famous person liked Winnie the Pooh as much as I did, enough to write a song about it. But Disney was not going to let Kenny Loggins record the song because they had the copyrights to Winnie the Pooh and the 100-Acre Woods characters. Kenny Loggins contacted Corden Walker, I believe is his name, who was at the time the VP of Disney. He actually went to Walker's house in Glendale, Florida, to perform the song for him. And after that, they agreed to let Kenny Loggins record the song and publish it, which I thought was a cute little anecdote. The album is basically kind of it's folk rock. You know, there's, aside from Bahivela, it's, you know, kind of country rock, kind of folk rock. I love the album. I grew up with it. When was this made? I think 1972. Yeah, this album came out in 1972. So I would have still been very young. I don't know. I know the album was in the house, but having three older sisters, you know, the albums that were in the house were a mix of my parents and my older sisters. I'm never able to remember, except for a few that I knew were my mother's and my father's. The stuff of like the later stuff that my sisters kind of got into, I was never sure if the albums belonged to my parents or to my older sisters. But it's a good example of country rock music from the era. Loggins and Messina have good harmony together. And I love harmony. I love acoustic guitar. So, you know, it's a good album for me, for my tastes. If that music interests you, give it a listen. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.